Right. Hi, everyone. James Williams. So I'm co-founder and CEO of Sero, and a little bit about us before we start. So we're coming up to 4 years old now. We were basically founded to accelerate our transition to net zero for the homes that we built and the homes that exist already. My background is actually on the energy side, and my co-founder is an architect, and we really saw the opportunity that both the energy system and the solutions that we need to implement in our buildings as a holistic approach. So we're a technology company, and we're building cloud-based solutions that will help us accelerate and address this challenge, but also improve the customer experience and make sure that we get the quality that we need to get as well in order to achieve net zero. We're a certified B Corporation, and a quickly growing team. So just a little bit, we're involved across a wide range of activities at the moment. We're leading on very large new build schemes. I've put a link in the chat to a YouTube video for an episode from Fully Charged where they featured this site, so you can go and find out a little bit more through that. We've also launched a home comfort service here where we are changing the way that energy is supplied to homes. So we've got lots of new build sites and activities going on. We're also delivering R&D across green finance. We're looking at innovation around fuel poverty and how we can start to level up communities, particularly when renewables start to introduce new challenges like who do you put in the south-facing home. So lots going on, but today really is to talk to you about the Optimised Retrofit project. So I'm going to run through quickly what the Retrofit Challenge is, what is an optimized retrofit, and what is the Pathfinder project, and give you some insight into that. So first of all, the Retrofit Challenge. So clearly it pretty much touches all of the homes that we have in the UK, somewhere north of 26 million. And at the moment, we only add to this number because pretty much all of the homes that we currently build new are adding to that list of retrofits as well. Depending on where you draw the line on activities, the Climate Change Committee accounts 40% of our carbon emissions to household activities. So it's a really big part of the carbon footprint to address. We're also operating in a sector that's largely self-regulated and self-employed, and the repairs, maintenance, and improvement sector. So we really need to bring those people on the journey with us as well. Now, every home is unique, even if it's of a certain typology. It has, like every human being, has had a different life and a different history. Therefore, we need to understand the unique characteristics of every building in order to address this challenge. And a lot of the homes are owned by people who typically have limited technical knowledge, the finances to invest in this solution, but also the interest as well. So that's something we really need to address. We've had failed attempts, and programs like the Green Homes Grant have put the industry on a back foot from a retrofit perspective. And we have a severe lack of data. The approach that we need to take going forward really needs to rely around good, high quality data about how people live and how technology and solutions deliver results in homes. And we still need to talk to Treasury about the fact that we still pay 20% VAT on retrofit, whereas new builds at 0%. So we've got lots of challenges to get past here. So what is an optimized retrofit? So first of all, it's a true definition of net zero. Importantly, this means it includes the human beings and the unregulated energy demands of the buildings, the plugins. So we've aligned ours with the UK Green Building Council definition of operational carbon as well. So first of all, let's define net zero correctly. Secondly, not all kilowatts are born equal. It is, of course, mechanisms like SAP and EPCs consider it to be fixed where it's not. If we were purely to change our behavior, we can make considerable carbon savings. Now, of course, technology allows us to live as we always did, but we really need to bring more attention to the opportunities that we have through time of use. We also need to start measuring in the right metric, carbon and not energy, because that is our target, net zero carbon. So we really need to be measuring our outcomes based on the targets that we have. And importantly, this is not about if you achieve net zero, this is about when. So we really need to factor in the future of grid decarbonisation, which is going to do some of the heavy lifting here. And buildings to a certain standard electrified will continue to decarbonise over time. So we really need to talk about what year these buildings are going to become net zero, even if they don't hit that target today. So an optimised retrofit considers, with that in mind, considers the fabric measures, renewable energy and smart energy systems, and how those in combination can take a building towards its net zero target in the future. So a little bit about the Optimised Retrofit Pathfinder project. So the program was actually called Optimised Retrofit. It was initially a £9.5 million funding round from Welsh Government. It was later increased to 14 million. And Sero as a lead, we pulled a collaboration together, we pulled a bid together with lots of organisations. It's the largest ever social landlord collaboration. There are 28 social landlords involved in this project. But also importantly, we've got organisations from academia, we've got the likes of Trustmark, and key industry players that need to. Everyone here, it needs to play a role in taking this solution forward. So it's a big cross industry and right across the UK as well, although all the activity is focused initially in Wales. Welsh Government are actually intending to launch a further programme of another 50 million this year, and I know that's just the beginning in terms of this approach behind optimised retrofit. So what was the goal? Well, the goal was really to find a way to decarbonise 250,000 homes in a decade. And that's purely representing the social housing component, which is where Welsh Government's focuses are initially. They launched the Better Homes, Better Wales, Better World report a few years ago, and that was targeting some really strict, really ambitious targets around net zero by the early 2030s, and that's really what we're working towards. But we need to build the processes. We need to develop skills in the local economy, and we need to make sure that we're actually getting the performance and the outcomes that we set out to receive. And Welsh Government is very aware that the energy system offers really great opportunities, and actually the principle having an intelligent energy system was actually then baked into the requirements of the whole project. So a little bit more about the project specifically. So we're building some digital tools. So first of all is the whole home survey, or our capture tool, as it's called. Now, this is really, this is aligned with PAS 2035, and it's making sure that we capture all of the information about the building that we require in order to understand what journey that building may need to go on. And it's really making sure that, aligned with PAS 2035, that the right measures are installed in the right order and in the right places, and indicating if a building is actually not ready for retrofit. But we need to make sure that we avoid those unintended consequences that we've seen before. So we've trained over 250 surveyors and who are actively out surveying properties at the moment and building up this database of details about the homes that are involved in our Pathfinder project. Our focus as a technology business is to make sure that this is very easy, and we're bringing the time for these surveys down considerably, so we can really start to make it an efficient process and increase the level of training with the surveyors as well. The second component is what you do then when you've got that data. So in the new year, we are releasing what we call our Pathways tool, a feature. It's taking that information and then saying, what is the journey that this building can then go through? Taking into account the planned maintenance of that building. So that all of these properties are, of course, with social landlords who will have a plan around planned maintenance. So how do we overlay a zero carbon plan on top of an existing planned maintenance journey? And that means that we can approach this in a series of steps and in a series of measures. But the key output, coming back to what I said at the beginning, is that we're generating EPCs and fabric energy efficiency data, but actually the really important target is actually when is that building going to be net zero. So behind the scenes, it's running some intelligence that is actually saying, well, these measures apply to this building, change its energy performance, and this is what that energy performance looks like into the future. So we're working with the Active Building Centre to plot for every 30 minutes the grid carbon emissions out to 2050. Now that won't be clearly won't be exactly right, but it's as good as it's as good a data that we have right now based on where we expect the grid to go, which means that we can start to align retrofit plans to organizational or local authority targets. I think over 70% of local authorities have a defined target for net zero, so we can really start aligning plans to achieve those targets. And the same for organizations like social housing, particularly where with Welsh Government's ambitions, an early 2030s date, we really need to make sure that we can demonstrate a plan that hits those dates. And all of this is part of a building passport. So a building passport really needs its past, its present, its future. The past captured by the survey, the present is how that home is operating right now, and using intelligent energy systems within the building to understand how it's the demands and how that building is running and how it can be changed, and the future then being the pathway and that its journey towards net zero. So a little bit about the intelligent energy system. I know this is a complicated diagram. The grey boxes are really where we need to focus, which is really around what are we controlling, what are we measuring in this. So, and there's a real this project is trying to generate a lot of data in order to make sure that we truly understand the sorts of solutions and how they will fit with people and how they live in their homes. So yes, heating, hot water, regulated and unregulated energy, regulated being anything that is hardwired into the building, and unregulated being anything you plug in and use, and of course then renewables and how they perform. So this, for all of the homes involved in this project, they will have this device going in order to do that, and it does give the opportunity then for data for the landlord, but also the opportunity for the tenant to move on to a comfort-based service as well at their choice, of course. So a little bit about foundational economy, and there's lots of projects going on here. We have 20 projects across 6 themes. I'm not going to run through them all. You can see the detail of them on the Optimised Retrofit.Wales website. I've posted a link to it in the chat. So what are we trying to do with the foundational economy projects? So we're looking at behavior and occupancy, and there's lots of studies going on into things like how do tenants, how do people respond to things like data privacy. How are we going to bring the SMEs and the self-employed traders, and how are we going to educate and bring them on this journey so they upskill and train and get ready to start to ramp up the number of homes that we require over future years. I think Welsh Government very much sees the ramp up in social housing being a key mechanism to upskill local trades. And with the data that we have around surveys, we can start to map out, this is where we're going to see lots of heat pump installs, or this is where we're going to see lots of, whether it's EWI or other measures. So we can start to really sort of focus training based on the need for solutions. Building passports and how they integrate across the industry to likes of Trustmarks and others. And there's lots of research going on, like future grid decarbonisation, forecasting, and other research projects. So there's lots of details on the website about these little individual projects that are going on with the various partners involved in the program. And then finally on the Pathfinder Homes. So here they all are. There is 1,724 homes in 2021. We expect this to double with the extension of the program into next year, of all types and all across Wales. So this is a huge effort across the collaboration across these social landlords, and our role is really to give them the technology and the processes to be able to start to scale up these retrofit solutions very quickly. So there is a lot happening. I think this is probably the largest retrofit program of its kind in the UK. And in terms of coming back to what are the recommendations? Well, we had a very clear vision for this project, which was to consider the decarbonisation of the grid and the opportunity that smart energy brings, whilst alongside the importance of fabric first and getting the right level of quality. So we had a clear vision that we managed to convince all of our partners to get involved with, and we also had an ambition for scale. We really needed the strength of this bid is really the strength of the collaboration and all the parties involved. So that was really important. And also, I think Welsh Government's view is that we've got to get on and we've got to do stuff on the ground. We've got to start. So it's been a busy year of ramping up to do that, and a lot of these homes will start to receive their retrofits in the coming months. So I think that brings me to the end. I think a couple of minutes over maybe, but thank you, and yeah, questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, James. So do put your questions in the Q&A tab. Yes, I have a few of my own to get us started. So just thinking about, I'm assuming that you're going to, as the retrofits get done, you're actually going to be modelling what the energy use is and how those are performing against targets. And is that going to be the same tool, or is that another part of what you're offering?
Yeah, so every single home in the retrofit, the first measure going in is the intelligent energy system. So that is collecting data around humidity, temperature, CO2, and performance. So because every home has its own journey, we will see lots of different solutions. We'll see, we'll see quite an array, but understanding the baseline and understanding the improvement and the level of improvement compared to where we expected it to be will be really valuable. So so the data is key, and to Welsh Government as well. So there's but we have the capacity in every single one of those retrofits to provide that really granular data around how those measures are being delivered in practice.
And a question from Jan here. Who are the surveyors being employed by? Is that local authorities or central government in Wales?
So it's a combination. A lot of the social landlords have the capacity internally too. So we've been training their in-house team and surveyors. Some of them are using surveying organisations to do that. So it's at the choice of the social landlord really, and more often than not, they're directly employed.
Great. Okay. And I suppose kind of the endless problem here is across the country is that of skills, and actually get really driving that up and working with colleges to get the skills. And those are skills at all levels. Those are the carpenters, the plasterers, and all of that. And they're also obviously digital specialists as well, and customer management. So what's the program for delivering that? And obviously, I appreciate you're from the technical side of things, but I wonder perhaps if you could give some insights into that.
Yeah, so a lot of what we're trying to do is around education and understanding. I think the industry sees transition to some of the skills that we need in renewables is highly with lots of red tape and highly complex, and it can, I think we're doing we have a program called the Decarb Army, as we call it, where we're trying to recruit and reach out to as many to as wider audience as we can, who aren't the type to be sat on conferences, and understanding what these programs really are. How do we reach out those? So we are looking at all channels really to get out to those trades. I mean, we've sponsored a podcast called the Beta Teach podcast, which I'll happily plug as a great sort of industry for the heating engineers particularly, and they've done a little segment at the end of each one of those podcasts to interview companies, say what is stopping you from going this route. And quite a lot of time it's complexity and having the time and having the ability to do the training, and they're not just going to take weeks off to go and train. So a lot of what we do is around education and finding, trying to unlock and understand the barriers. But yes, we really see the need. I think the heating industry is really where we see the need for the sort of the greatest shift. But yes, there's lots of skills required across a wide spectrum. From our perspective in tech, we're finding it, it's a very competitive technology sector. There's a shortage of developers at the moment, with lots of growing tech sectors. But it's a priority for the program is really around reaching out to the right audiences who may not be in the right channels.
Another question about customers. So you're putting this intelligent energy system into people's homes. Are people nervous about being spied on? Are they? How do you bring the residents on board with all of this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important that people trust how data are being used. I think that Welsh Government plays a really key role in that, because they launched the program with a requirement around data. This is something that they need for the greater public good. But it's really important to start to distinguish between what is property data and what is personal data, and there's not always a really clear line between those two. But take, for an example, a housing association, how efficient a heat pump might run is something that, of course, of key interest to a landlord. How the tenant sets their heating schedule, again, will be something that is personal. So it's so I think it's we spend a lot of time talking about data privacy and what it means. I mean, the data allows us, we run a comfort service. The data allows us to provide a better outcome to the tenant and provide them the data they need to understand their energy costs. So there are real benefits to tenants here around education, but there is clearly always nervousness about data privacy, which is why we've got to be very clear about how it's used, and who and where and how. And I think that's really the focus, is to be very transparent and clear around around how that data is used.
Thank you. Question from Alison. Do you know if volume housing builders are interested in retrofitting homes? In Scotland, the build rate of new homes varies across the country, so it could be another source of employment or income.
In my experience, they're not. I think we see I'd say from a volume house builder perspective, I think from a clearly there are contractors, some of which may build their own homes, that will be watching the opportunity in retrofit, but it's not something that we've seen as really of interest to volume house builders. We've really, I mean, it's the reality of it is the repair, maintenance, improvement sector, which is largely self-employed, and that's the sector that we really need to, and we get more results in the local economy then as well. I think that's our target, is to make sure that we develop local economy and supply chains.
Yes. And just in terms of the software itself, is that who owns it? So is that going to be made available to others outside of the Optimised Retrofit programme in Wales to use?
Yeah, so I mean, we own it, we built it. But it's licensed. We'll, like any technology company, our aim is to make create a very strong value proposition and scale, this platform for use across the country. So where we release it in the new, this program is giving us the I guess that beta phase, whatever you want to call it, to make sure that we get the feedback from all of our partners, to make sure that we're building the right tools, it's addressing the right challenges. But our intention is to make this software wildly available, and and create really good value propositions for anyone looking at retrofit. I think retrofit still lacks that scalable solution, and our view is technology and a data-driven model will really take us forward very quickly.
And just on that sort of theme, I mean, Karen comments, the Welsh Government seems to be very supportive. What about England? Have you had many inquiries on interest from English combined authorities or other authorities in England or Scotland?
We're seeing we're seeing a lot of attention now from local authorities who are watching what's going on in Wales, because the approach from Welsh Government is that we can't flood the sector with funding when there's not the right processes and protections in place to make sure we don't make the mistakes of the past. So it's a very I think Welsh Government's taken a very good approach here and said, look, let's build these processes. Let's make sure that we don't fall into the old habits or mistakes, and let's make sure that we measure and get the right outcomes, and we can pivot quickly. So the benefit of a digital, more data-driven approach is that we can quickly start to pivot away from solutions that give us unintended consequences. So the local authorities, I think a lot of the failings in some of the big funding, like the Green Homes grant, other things are really due to the lack of those processes and the ability to deliver those processes. So we are seeing a lot more interest. We regularly get contacted by local authorities in England who are looking to create similar outcomes within their local authorities. So I think the Social Housing Demonstrator Fund is probably the first, the place where we'll see the most activity around this. Our view is still that social housing and actually we're moving into the private rented sector as well in future phases of the program, and actually looking at how the social landlords might be able to support private rented sector landlords as well, using their frameworks and processes in order to support them. So that's something that we're considering. And then I think in terms of the owner-occupier sector, what we're seeing from the likes of the Green Finance Institute and those initiatives are looking at pushing finance incentives in order to drive the able to pay market. So there are great things going on in England as well, but yes, we clearly need to do more.
Yeah. And technical question, how long do you have to have the intelligent energy system installed prior to deciding on what retrofit actions to take? And how long does it take to install? Is it mostly Internet of Things sensors?
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be installed beforehand, because we can follow the processes of PAS 2035 in order to identify the most appropriate measures for that building. The reality of putting it in first is that we get really good baseline information. So that's something that's adds to the program at the moment. We do expect that it'll typically be installed alongside other measures in the future. Whereas we've got a much better idea of what the baseline could look like when you start to extrapolate it across homes. But and it is, yes, mainly. So it's actually this version is a fully wired solution, but we are metering. So it's got some local metering on our electricity consumption. We have temperature, humidity, and CO2 sensors going in as well. Plus, also when they start to add technology like a heat pump or a battery, we start to pull the data and information from those technologies as they go in. But from the social landlord's perspective, they can integrate, they can add technologies in series of steps, and the home is then ready to adopt those technologies and add them to a system as part of that journey. So they don't need to go back in or change or take it out or anything else.
Okay, and there's a couple of questions that I'll ask together, which is, do you have off-the-peg retrofit solutions for a range of housing types, or are you going to generate standard retrofit solutions as part of the project that could be used elsewhere? And that links really to another question about the energy sprong approach, which is obviously kind of standard, a standard approach as well. So what are your thoughts on those points?
So there won't be a standard approach. We'll see lots of different technology solutions. So our view on this is that we do a bottom up. So we're taking the data granular level bottom up from all of the homes, but we're doing that at such a large scale that what you can then start to do is look top down to say, all right, where is EWI most appropriate? So you can start to then aggregate demand for certain technology solutions, but you're still taking the approach that it's the right solution for the right building, and that's really important, because you're not necessarily just going to roll down a community and install heat pumps as an example. It may not be the right solution in all of those buildings. So, but you could look at it as a we've built in for this program specifically the ability to create heat maps around where certain technologies where there's a real demand for certain technologies and solutions and measures. So we don't have other than the energy management and the control and the optimization of home energy, which is Sero solution. We're technology agnostic, and it's really about the right measures for the right buildings.
Thank you. Do you factor in terms of the retrofit approach and being kind of as low carbon in use as possible, do you look at the embodied energy? So, for example, choices of insulation materials could really affect what the overall carbon use is, kind of lifetime carbon emissions.
So right now we don't factor that in. However, it's built into the next phase for us. So we want to get on and deliver real improvements on the ground, which is why operational carbon has been the focus in the first phase. But when we start to map out measures, we can start then to look at how sustainable those measures are from an embodied carbon perspective. So it's a natural evolution of the tool set for us. But just because we're eager to start delivering results on the ground, it's part of the next phase, but it's very much part of our planning.
Mm-hmm. And obviously a familiar question with fabric first approaches and insulation will be about ventilation. Are you, as part of that, obviously your system is predominantly, I guess, measuring energy use, but what about the ventilation implications of putting in the retrofit measures?
Yeah, so ventilation, moisture risk, fuel poverty risks are all measured as part of the pathway. So we are considering all of those. Unfortunately, you've got the CEO today, so you know that all I do is recruit people who are very good at this stuff. So we've got some great experts at Sero who are leading in their field in this space, particularly around moisture movement. Colin King, I'll call out specifically as one of the former BRE directors who is a specialist in this. So the tools are all built with the ability to flag any risks around moisture and ventilation, and also things like the risk of fuel poverty becoming an increased risk or energy costs going up. So yes, there's lots of things going on in calculating the right approach for the right building. So.
And sort of linked to that, how would you see the work you're doing fitting with the ENERFIT? That's the passive house standard for retrofit.
Yeah.
How would you see it fitting with that standard?
I'll dodge that one on the basis that I'm not the right person to ask, but I'd be very happy if you wanted to follow up via email. I'll put you in touch with the right person.
Fair enough. Okay, I'm just looking through the questions now just to see how we're going on these. Yeah, I think you mentioned about friendly to wildlife. I think I'm trying to recall that. Could you just elaborate a little bit more about that?
Did I say friendly for wildlife?
I don't. Did you say that? I'm just trying to remember. Question from Gordon, but I don't recall actually wildlife.
I might have. Yeah. Of course, we want to be friendly to wildlife. Yeah, and I think ecologically sensitive is part of our DNA. So it's I think it's just part of the way we see creating right solutions. So I'll give a very vague, high-level answer on that one.
Thank you. Thanks for that. And then in terms of a question from at the bottom there, from what energy standard are you actually looking to get? So is it EPC? Well, I'm not even sure if you're using EPC, but are you going for kind of total net zero or EPC A, EPC B, or
so yeah. EPCs are almost, well, EPC is not the right tool for the job. I'll be polite. They're not the right tools for the job. So we measure EPCs, of course, but really it's about, for us, the metric is what year that building is net zero. And of course we can generate live carbon emissions by year, so we can measure carbon. We have smart metering allows that, and the grid, we read the grid intensity, carbon intensity. We can actually measure carbon in and out of the building to create a live carbon footprint for every building that we have, and we do that already. So why not use any other metric than net zero? And I think, going back to my introduction, important that we do include for the people in that as well, and the plugins and the unregulated energy use.
Okay, so Emma Brading has clarified friendly for wildlife was in the agenda brief for this session. But anyway, you briefly commented on that. So
I think what I would say to Emma on that is, we have a sister company called Sero Homes, and we're building our own zero carbon scheme in South Wales, and that will be from a biodiversity perspective and a placemaking perspective, will be really kind of class leading. So there's if you'd like, we're about to start on site on that within the coming weeks. So that's one I would point you at, that takes into account wildlife and biodiversity.
Okay, just how would this fit with smart meter programs? Presumably this is just an addition to, you'll get your smart meter from your energy provider, but this will be.
Yeah, I mean, a smart meter data isn't particularly smart. It's half hourly data, but doesn't tell you anything else about the building. So it has to be lined up with other data sources in order to be actually useful. So it's, smart meters are an industry way of efficiently settling electricity bills. They're an important tool in that, because we're looking at moving customers to dynamic tariffs as part of this. So when we implement measures such as storage and air source heat, or heat pumps and hot water storage, we're shifting those demands around. So the smart meter is vital to that, because that's how we start to then trade and settle those electricity bills.
Yeah, and I noticed that OVO and Octopus were part of your partnership. Could you just say a little bit more about how you're working with them?
So our comfort service that we've launched, which we're running on around 60 homes now on a new build development, but obviously will be offered to retrofit as well. So we are partnered with Octopus. They provide us the dynamic tariff. So we actually bill the residents. So we don't sell kilowatts. We think kilowatts old news. So we ask the customer, the occupant, to say, this is how I want to live. This is the comfort I want from my home. And in the background, we are essentially delivering that at the lowest possible cost and the lowest possible carbon footprint. So our relationship with Octopus is to be able to enable us to buy the electricity, but the customer doesn't have to worry about which half hour of that day the energy is cheap, or whether they need to turn the dishwasher on at 2 o'clock in the morning, or heat the hot water tank, then I don't believe actually that when energy costs change every 30 minutes, and carbon of electricity changes every 30 minutes, and that and actually now we can generate, import, export. Are customers really going to be choosing and managing that? I don't believe so. But companies like Octopus are key for us to work with and able to unlock the benefits.
And what's been the customer reaction to that comfort service?
Positive, because they can call us up and say, why is my heat pump coming on in early hours of the morning? It's really noisy. Or why is, whatever it might be. And that's not to say that everyone thinks that, by the way, but just as an example. So we're responsible for their comfort. So how their home is operating, how how they can get their bill lower. So we don't make a markup on their energy costs. So we want to get it as low as we possibly can. That's our job. And then from a carbon perspective, for those customers who are interested in also creating the lowest carbon footprint, we can help them do that as well. So it's very much around the transition from selling kilowatts through a meter to selling comfort and a lower carbon footprint.
I'm wondering if now we're coming out of COVID, whether you're looking at doing kind of tours for people to come and actually see what you're doing. Is that something? Because I'm thinking that for some people, actually just seeing it running on the ground can really make a difference beyond the presentation. Is that something you're looking to do?
Absolutely. I'll pre-warn you that it's designed to be underwhelming, because these homes are remarkably familiar, and that's the approach that we've taken. But yeah, there's a number of sites that we can take you around and talk through all the systems. So the site that I flashed a photo up of is in Tonnereville. We've taken a number of local authorities around there, and actually a number of local authorities are actually thinking about how they could use a similar approach around what is net zero and what year does it achieve, and whether that's in their planning or awarding planning permissions. So it's a really interesting, I think for those who understand that EPCs are not the right tool, it's really interesting to see how could we actually start to redefine those. So those sites are a really good example of what I think a net zero scalable new build looks like, and what a home comfort service could look like. So there's open invitation to come and see us.
Great. Okay. Well, on that, I'd like to say thank you very much. We're out of time. Brilliant talk there by James, and thank you for answering all of those questions. There will be recordings of all of the presentations from the workshops we've been running today available on the website. That will take 2 or 3 days to come up on the website, so do look out for that. And we are going to be moving very shortly to a panel discussion, which is going to really kind of bring the themes from all these different workshops together. So do stick around for that. And thank you very much for listening in. And you can leave this session just by pressing the leave button on the top right of your screen. Thank you very much again. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Cheers.